Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, Nadeina, head of growth at SaaS Group. Here we acquire buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business a success. So today with me is Pierce, CEO and co-founder of babelforce, a no-code platform for building and automating customer experience workflows, primarily focused on contact centers. Welcome.
Hi, Anna. Great to be here.
And I'll be honest, I took this description of the company from AI. So I asked ChatGPT, what is
Okay.
babelforce? And this is going to be, like pretty much any podcast in the last like 6 months, a lot about AI. But how did it do?
Well, yeah, it was pretty good. It means because nobody knows, right, how to optimize for like what's the equivalent of SEO and search optimization for like, if somebody asks about your company and nobody really knows how to do it, right? It's such a new field. So I don't know if we did that because we got the right, content online, but that was pretty good actually, Anna, I have to say. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, actually,
Yeah.
a couple of days ago, we had a webinar about how to optimize for AI search
Ah,
engines. So go look.
okay. Okay, good. I'll
Shameless
send the
plug.
guys there. Okay, good.
But yeah, awesome. Well, before we go into everything that you're doing with babelforce and how you're approaching AI era, maybe let's start with your background because you've got years and years of experience. So how did you get to do what you're doing?
Uh, yeah, I've been 26 years in the CX industry, and I started with AI actually. So would you believe it? AI is not that new. So yeah, it's been a long journey, and basically been working with contact centers, CX teams, customer engagement teams throughout that entire 26-year period. So I actually love this industry, and I've had a lot of different roles in it, and launched a lot of different products and worked with major brands around the world on it. And as AI is where I started. So my journey, my very first job in the industry, well, you won't believe this, but I wish I had kept the business card because on the business card was a job title, machine learning mathematician, which is now relatively established as a, right, that wouldn't be
And
so
cool.
weird. Yeah, but in 2000, in the year 2000, that was like, that's quite a strange job title. I could never tell anybody what I did, right? But we actually were building the kind of things that we use now. We were trying to build very, very early. We had a lot of money to build a very early version of, say, a combination of Siri and ChatGPT or something like a personal assistant combined but of course we didn't have the tools that we have now, right? And the models that we could build on the hardware and software we're running were tiny. We're like really, really small by comparison. But that's where I started. So I used to work with speech transcription, what we now sometimes call speech to text, text to speech, all the lovely stuff, the stuff that allows us to use voice mode, for example, with ChatGPT. That's the kind of stuff that I've been doing for the last 26 years. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
How did you get into CX? What drove you to build babelforce?
Yeah, actually, I'm a very geeky CEO. So I was building, like I am, this job, as you got from the job title, I guess I was actually building algorithms, so I take the science and turn it into an algorithm. And that would not necessarily be the algorithm that goes live, but then, would go to the developers and they put it into production. But I was building those and testing those algorithms. So I started out from a very geeky corner, but gradually then in my career, I loved working with sales. So it was just like, so I became the kind of product support for sales in these and of course, between the years 2000 and 2015, say, AI projects were very, very big things, right? They were sometimes literally, I mean, they were often maybe they might be $5 million as part of a $50 million bid to change something in a huge company, right? We're talking like Bank of America or Barclays or Walgreens in the USA, or very large conglomerates. And that's how AI projects looked like that back then. They don't look like that now, right? Now you fire up the AI tool and you start using it immediately. But that's how it looked then. So I just love doing the sales really and the customer communication part of things, which brought me kind of out of the lab and into the commercial world. that's kind of what happened. By about 2006 or so, I was mainly involved in talking to enterprises about their projects, and then launching products. So that's kind of my route from tech, like from being a deep techie into where I am now, the CEO and founder of babelforce. Yeah.
Will you be the first CEO to admit on this podcast that he's still coding and it still makes it into production?
No, no, no. I haven't. No, no. We have these beautiful. I don't know. You might have seen. There's these beautiful diagrams that you can developers can take of all the commits that they make, and they look like moving organic objects, like almost like living organisms, because it shows all the things that's happening with the code. I think the last time my name appeared on one of those is like I don't know. It's like 9 years ago, something like that. Yeah, so no, no, no.
Okay.
I'm mainly involved for my sins. I'm mainly involved in investor relations, company strategy, right, and initiatives at the strategic level in the company. So yeah, I don't.
Okay.
But I dig into the tech as much as I can. Like I sort of deep dive a little bit, then come back up again and get more involved in the strategic nature of what I do now.
Okay. We're still looking for a coding CEO. If you're one, please reach out to me. But yeah, okay. So since you started your career in AI, and now it's such a big thing, and I've been following what you're writing on LinkedIn, and I think kind of the scope of it is okay. Don't jump on AI just because it's trendy, but find the fundamental value that you're bringing to customers first. And correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe if I'm right, if that's exactly the gist that uh, you intend to put out there, then maybe explain why and how you're working with it at babelforce.
Yeah, so I think you probably, I mean, I spend most of my time, well, a lot of my time doing thought leadership. And then to back that up, of course, doing a lot of research on what's really going on. And of course, I have the advantage and the wonderful pleasure of talking to companies who've already mainly tried a lot of AI. When we go into a company now, like I literally talked to an insurance company a few weeks ago, and they had 78 projects live introducing AI across the organization. I mean, okay, the company's got like 60,000 people working in it worldwide, right? But they had tracked 78 running projects with AI. So there's very few unsophisticated medium or large sized companies, there's not as much naivety as there was 2.5 years ago. And I think what we're seeing is, unfortunately, and you can see this in the data, and Deloitte and Gartner and, pick your favorite McKinsey, whatever, pick your favorite analyst company, you'll all see that not we're kind of going down, we're not in the trough of despair or anything, or the trough of disillusionment in the hype cycle, but we are going down the hill and people are getting more realistic. And of course, what's happening is we're seeing a lot of the business cases are not being reached, right? So the ROI is not achieved in a lot of cases, but it is in others. So, which means that people are getting more differentiated. And I think I agree exactly with what you said, Anna, is that um, it's important to figure out where it's genuinely realizable and where the adoption of it actually works for the people involved, the consumers, the internal users. And that's getting both of those things to happen at the same time is actually, it's a bit harder than people might have assumed in the beginning. So I'll give you an example. it, a lot of the reason why there might be the promise, the idea that we'll need less staffing, or if we have natural attrition of the people that we have in the contact center, we won't have to replace them as quickly, right? Because the cost of hiring people in the contact center, training them, keeping them for a little while, churn is relatively high, rehiring, that whole process is hugely, hugely expensive. So the idea that you wouldn't necessarily need to refill all those positions or fill them as rapidly is super, super appealing, right? And the same in other parts of the business as well. But what's happened in contact center, it turns out that actually the ROI is often realizable to some extent, but the dream that you'll have less people doesn't seem to happen. Or certainly the reduction in the number of people you're going to need is way less than you had hoped for. And I think, there's two reasons for this. One reason is that the number of interactions that companies are having with consumers is going through the roof, right? We're expecting, I mean, can you imagine? We're expecting a 5 times increase in the number of touch points that people have with companies over the next about 8, 9 years. Then it depends on the data set you look at. And I think that's realistic because in the past, every automation wave we've seen so far has not reduced the number of agent minutes in the world. Right? In fact, it has increased. So, I mean, it's increasing slower than the amount of automation, but the curve is still going up. So there are more agents talking on phones, like more minutes of agents talking on phones now in 2025 than there were in 2015 or in 2000, right? So yet we've been through cloud virtualization. We've been through a first wave of chatbots between 2010 and 2016. Now we're on the second wave of chatbots. We have massive automation inside most of our CRMs and our ticketing systems and everything. Right? We have apps, right? Wonderful, right? Single touch, short, sweet experiences on apps, right? We're all used to that now. So what's happening, right? And of course, the same thing is happening as what is happening in the past is we also want more, and companies are more and more inventive and more differentiated about realizing what they need to offer consumers. And in many cases, that doesn't actually result in a real, genuine decrease in the number of staff that you need. And which is why I guess everybody knows the story about Klarna, right? So Klarna announces it's going to, get rid of 700 people, or it even said the AI is doing the work of 700 people, and then less than a year later, it is the human service company, right? Okay, it's for premium customers, but that means the A/B testing has shown, there's a lot of situations where you need real people to do this work. And that doesn't mean they didn't. I think they achieved an amazing business case. They actually did reduce their need for people, but in another area, they realized, now those people are even more valuable. So we need to actually even upskill them, if you know what I mean. Like, so because now they're going to be dealing with more complex queries. So I think it can be hard to achieve maybe the initial aims. On the other hand, the second reason why it is working, I think, is that generally speaking, if a company is doing a lot of repeat things over and over and over again, the same thing, then it's the kind of thing which anybody can see a human probably shouldn't be doing. And so if you can get rid of even, a fraction of those, typically it has an impact that's realizable pretty much immediately. Because if a contact center is using outsourced agents, often they're paying for some variable component. So if those routine tasks are no longer being done by a human, the bill just drops fairly quickly. But that's not the case in every AI application, right? So that's why there's quite a lot of disappointment in the places where you put in the investment and you don't get the benefit.
Absolutely. There are so many, like you said, there was a company with 78 AI use cases or applications or projects. I started counting at least those that I know we've implemented at SaaS Group, and I wonder, how many of them are working as expected and actually are moving the needle. And I mean, I would expect some of them fail, which is totally normal, but also really interested in like seeing the correlations, which ones, and maybe comparing it to what you just said. But okay, so back to the fundamentals. What's the fundamental value that you guys at babelforce are bringing to your customers, and how has it been evolving from the beginning to now?
Okay, that's the second one is a big question. I'll deal with that one then separately. But so the value that we offer, there's this wonderful GIF. I don't know if you've seen it, but I can send it to you. You can post it or whatever if you find it interesting. But I love it because it's an angel going up an escalator into heaven, sort of like, or a person's. So they go to heaven, and then the escalator collapses, it breaks, and then it goes down to hell. And then the heaven is labeled AI, and the hell is labeled data. Right? Is that so? So the idea being that and then it's the kind of enterprise setting is that as soon as you begin an AI project, the thing you come up against, the wall you hit is, oh my God, all those things that we tried to ignore for the last 10 years and not solve on integration capability and how good is our data, right? And how often do we clean it? Like how do we upkeep data? How do we orchestrate across all of our 20 different systems? And I'm not joking, 20 systems is not uncommon to run a CX organization, right, in a medium or large company. So they come up against this fundamental problem that they're going to have to do a lot more data lookups, a lot more data writes, a lot more cleaning in order for the AI to even be implementable. Certain, never mind being efficient, just being even effective to start with. And the fundamental value that we bring is that we are very focused on voice. We do the voice channel. Whether we don't, it's pretty much, we're pretty much agnostic whether we're helping agents in the voice channel do the job really well or whether we're automating using AI and other automation. Both, we do both areas, but fundamentally we're really helping call centers, people running call centers, to be able to optimize their customer experience and to offer the best possible customer service that they can. And our sort of our superpower is that we can help with all of this data manipulation and all this system integration with the voice channel really, really fast, regardless of the complexity. So we're not promising, like we never promise that it'll be simple. It's just not going to be simple if you're going to integrate 20 systems and you're going to offer some AI in your voice channel and some optimized agent, human agent service. That's just never simple. So our promise to our customers is essentially we make hard things a bit easier, or even hard things a lot easier. And that's really the value that we bring to the table. So we help people to use, essentially without doing any coding, just to put Lego blocks together to solve all of these very, very complex problems that they have in the call center. So it's mainly, and the people we sell to, the people we engage with are those who are running significant call centers.
And in your case, when we are saying AI, are we talking mostly machine learning?
No, actually, machine learning is really in the background here. You can think of it as something that's prepared under the hood somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It gets fed with more data. It's not the most significant thing because what I mentioned earlier is that most of the return on investment comes from routine, repeatable tasks that are replaced, right? So, which means that they're very well understood. The data models that are necessary, I mean, to be honest, 95% of the machine learning is based on normal human speech and text, which means that, right, which is the kind of thing that's available widely in the world. And the parts that are not AI and are more about automation are to do with alignment with business processes. So that's not AI. So actually, the machine learning that's necessary is just the machine learning that's making those models better at speech and at text generation and so on, which is what's happening in the world anyways, right? Hundreds and hundreds of billions at this point are being spent
Yeah.
on optimizing that stuff. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about AI in those cases.
All right. I just thought it would be good to clear that up because, like I said, like pretty much every conversation here on the podcast the last 6 months is about AI. And at some point, we've hit this wall where even like sometimes me and my guest, we would probably have a bit of a different understanding of what AI in the use case means. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in the that I think this is why this is another indication of why contact centers and call centers tend to achieve a good return on investment, is because by the very nature of them, they always have a large percentage of routine tasks to be done. So it's a perfect application area. And in fact, that's why I think in every single analyst report you look at from the major analyst companies, market analyst companies, almost every single one will point to customer service and CX being in the top three areas that companies end up investing more in AI after they've run some of their 78 projects or whatever, right? Where do they continue to invest is a very good indicator of where it's working, right? And it tends to work really well in that context because mainly you need AI to handle human interaction and human speech and human text, but you don't necessarily need AI to be trained and to do new machine learning. New machine learning is very expensive. You don't need to do a new machine learning model mostly for handling how the automation happens on top of the AI. Right. Most of that is classic integration, orchestration, right? And that's the bit where we add the value is like, how do you take seven, whatever it is, five different AI components, your 20 internal systems or your three internal systems you need to integrate. How do you take that, put it together, and produce something that feels like a beautiful, short, sweet interaction, the kind of thing we'd like to have with an app on our phone? That's what we're trying to help our customers with.
Yeah, fascinating. And well, let's get back to the big second chunk of the question. How has the vision of the company and the problem that you're solving and the value that you're providing has been changing over the years?
Yeah, so I came from working in this area for a very long time, and I realized around 2010 that already actually that most of this problem for medium-sized companies was going to be about data integration, and that we could massively simplify it. We could take 100-person days for these large companies and turn it into 2-person days or 10-person days, but like definitely a factor of 10 less. And that was kind of the genesis of the idea for the babelforce platform. At the time, of course, AI was not a topic at all. I think so. So that's been a massive driver recently, and a huge. I mean, so for us, it's been amazing, right? Actually, because it's encouraged companies to make decisions on all those things that they might otherwise just leave lying as they are. Right? Companies have larger, middle-sized, large companies have a strong tendency to just live with an adequate enough situation as opposed to changing it. Right? So change is really hard the bigger you get. And the AI hype, if you want to call it that, or what's happening with AI in general in the market now, is forcing people to engage with all of these fundamental questions on their IT architecture and so on. So that's been a huge change for us. But so overall, I mean, the changes we've been through are the classic changes, I think, of a SaaS company, right? So we bootstrapped the company. Like with our own money. None of the founders, there's two other co-founders, Timo and Christian, and we've two like C-level management team members that joined us on the journey as well. And all those five people, none of us come from money. We didn't ask daddy to write a check, so that we could start the company. So we bootstrapped with our own cash initially. So which was what basically what we had lying around and could scrape together from friends and family, right? Classic kind of bootstrapping start. And we actually bootstrapped for 5 years because we realized this platform we're building, it's not like an app. Like usually software apps tend to get launched relatively quickly. You get users involved and you try to grow them. And whereas we're not trying to get tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of customers. We're in the mid-market and enterprise space, which means we're always looking for adding, say, a total of 100 customers, right? But they have very large contracts. So we realized we were going to spend at least 3-4 years building the platform because it's a very big data integration and automation platform. So that was known, and we did that in part time while we had other jobs and on the weekends and sitting around the kitchen table together. So that's when the C-level members were still writing code, Anna, to answer your earlier question, right? So that's quite a while ago. And we didn't take any money, and so any like institutional money or real investor money for that entire time. The first round that we did was 2019. And I'd say, you're asking about change. That's obviously a massive change. Before that, we're, usually around between 5 and 8 people, some people only part-time even. And then after that, you're switching from being like an 8-person organization to, trebling in size in a year at that time, which is a massive change. And of course, then you've got a board, you've got VC investors. And so and that was a big change, I think, in our journey. And we've had several rounds since then, but that's been more continuous, if you know what I mean, because once you're in that setup, your company is kind of prepared for dealing with the dynamics, the governance that comes with having institutional VC investors. I'd say the other maybe big inflection point has been these AI changes in the last 2.5 years, because our first AI models we launched in 2018, right? But obviously not LLMs, smaller neural networks. And we still use those inside the product because they do very specific things and they're very, very fast, much faster than large LLM, the large language models. So even though we were in that world, it's still been like it was as dramatic for us as it was for everybody else in the world, right? What's happened over the last 2.5 years. So I think that's been quite an inflection point, but also more continuity actually, because because it has driven change elsewhere. Like it's just forced people to to face up to the reality that they really need to be a lot better at how they manage their integrations and their data. So that's been more of a push, I would say. Whereas I think the investment changes are the ones that, you know, cause a complete difference in the nature of the company almost. But that's not maybe the first investment is like that. You know, there's really something fundamentally different going on, and you really have the power to go into the market in a larger way, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we were more grown up, like we're certainly a much more grown up organization than we were when we were sitting around the kitchen table at the weekend working on this years ago.
How big are you now?
Oh, we're not that big, so we are 35 people now.
Okay.
So yeah, so we're not the kind of organization that grows to be massive because of the background nature of the product. Like most people wouldn't know our brand name either, right? Because we sell B2B to larger organizations. So within our niche, we become well known, but that niche is very, very specific. Yeah. So which is quite good, means that you can generate quite a lot of revenue with quite a small number of people. It's much more about sort of hiring really, really talented people. Like the engineers we work with, I mean, they're the best. Like, it's just extraordinary working with them. But it's the same in all the other parts of the business as well, those who do enterprise sales, whatever. So it's like very sort of very talent dense environment. And you're you look at from a commercial perspective or from a financials perspective, then you're looking at trying to generate quite a lot of revenue with, a very scalable, smaller team.
That's amazing. That's what we believe in as well at SaaS Group. But well, since you mentioned it, you do have a sales motion, and I kind of assume, correct me if I'm wrong, that's your main growth driver. But what are other growth channels, and maybe if there is a channel that surprised you over the years but has been super effective?
I mean, actually, what surprised me is the things we've dropped a little bit. Like, so it's enterprise sales, which means that it's a lot about being out in the world. It's right. It's a lot about events. It's a lot about relationship management, and it's a lot about a very long. So the marketing part of it is a lot of it is nurturing people who know about you, who are kind of are in your reach horizon, nurturing them for 18 months, 24 months. Because they might not be ready to do a project until a lot of time passes by. They might have had to see you a lot in the meantime. So that's kind of the nature of it. And then what I've been surprised about is I had assumed, and we had that classical outreach actually would be really, really important, like phoning people up, for example. That's very simplified. It's not just phoning people up. You're not just phoning anybody, right? It's a huge amount of research, and then the phone call is like the end of a big funnel of exercise of activity. But I had assumed that would be really, really important. But I think LinkedIn has kind of changed the game a bit there because since we're going to events anyway, we're going to meet in person with the people that we meet. Then, and then our marketing is achieving quite a big reach within our niche, which is possible because we can define our niche really, really, really well and our targets really well, which means we can kind of reach a lot of them. But then, how do you stay in contact with them? Because I think email. What do they say about email? Is the graveyard for newsletters. Like you
Exactly.
know, right? So, like, how do you stay in contact with them? The email obviously doesn't really, really work. And LinkedIn is very good for that, I think, actually. And it can be run really, really well. So that surprised me how for enterprise retouch, sort of a regular visibility, LinkedIn has been much more powerful than outreach to the audience. So I think that's been yeah, that's been a learning. But to be honest, Anna, we've learned so many things and made so many mistakes. Like it's like, you know, and you always know afterwards, right? You're very wise after you've tried, whether like with some example, we used to spend quite a lot of money on media, media placement, media, like classical, like ad purchasing sort of thing. I mean, we still do, of course. It's part of the mix. Everything's always part of the mix. But like, as like trying to demonstrate that generates something, you know, it's at most a sort of background activity, tiny part of
Yeah.
the mix, unimportant. But it takes a long time to learn which bit of it you should still keep doing and which bit is rubbish.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to try basically. It is a trial and error exercise. There's quite a lot of science to it. There's a lot of data, but it's basically A/B testing forever, really.
Absolutely. And what you've been describing is actually very similar to what we're doing at SaaS Group. And real life events also work for us. And it's like you said, it's a lot about nurturing, just like kind of being on the radar, no strings attached, but like we make sure that we're there whenever you are there. And kind of also trying to provide value in a different way. But that said, I think one of the you've met with some of the people from Zenloop at the recent
Yes.
um, what is it, customer contact week in Berlin. And after that I saw that was LinkedIn. I mean, where else would I see it? There was like a set of videos and different posts about the event and how you did it. And I was wondering how, because it looked extremely nice. Like kudos to you and the marketing team, whoever is preparing this. But it looked extremely nice, and I was wondering how much time goes into it, how much prep goes into it, and how are you able to attribute growth to those events?
Oh, attribution is really, that's really hard. I think the one word answer would be badly, Anna, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, I can't take any credit for all that, but Jack and the team and Jack Barton and running that. So they like we leave nothing to chance with events. I mean, that event that was I think it was CCW, right? CCW
Yes.
Berlin, right? 2025. So like that event would be one of the bigger ones of the year. It costs a stupid amount of money. I don't even want to think about it. Like it's ridiculous, you know. Honestly, for a bootstrapper, it can be very hard, right, to
I
actually
know.
sign off on that budget. So so that's very expensive. But then because of that, for example, it makes a lot of sense to always hire a professional videographer and photographer to come to the event because there isn't, I mean, if you're if your company is at an earlier stage, it can be hard to do that. So then take the photos yourself. You do whatever you can, right? Always, you do it anyway, one way or the other. But you know, it means that you kind of prepare for the fact that you're going to have a very long tail of content that's coming out of it. Some of it you'll even use next year to promote the next time that you go to that event or to show one of us on stage or whatever it might be. So we do a lot of that. We do a lot of interviews. We do a lot of preparation. I mean, we literally spend like about between 12 weeks before we start, 8 weeks before we already are trying to have quite a few of our meetings set up, which means our stand is going to have 60% occupancy of meetings, like in terms of the pre-sales engineers who are there, the people doing demos and so on, before like many weeks before the event occurs. And in the last weeks of the event, we try to fill up the remainder of that as well when there's more of a push and there's more. So it's a huge funnel of pre-activity, a huge like long tail of after activity, nothing left to chance. It's like precision project management actually is what it takes. And we used to do it a little bit, obviously a little bit lighter because we were smaller, and you learn fairly quickly that if you're going to be spending anyway for that huge amount of money, you really have to put a lot in around it, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing a post about our upcoming events in September, October, in a couple of days. And I was thinking, is it too early? And then, like, no, 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 it's not too early. Getting people gathered anywhere during summer is a nightmare. Start early, don't make the same mistake. So I'm
Yeah,
there with
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Okay, I know that you have an announcement. Well, you have just this new integration with Zendesk. And if you can tell me a little bit more about this, why this is important, why is it a big deal for you guys, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so we've been working with Zendesk for 9 years, and Zendesk is the market leader in ticketing, case management. So like for tracking and managing experiences and communication with consumers. So we have a long history with them, but they've of course invested huge amounts in AI over the last few years, and they bought the company that was called Ultimate, which is now called Zendesk AI Agents. And that's an LLM based as well as general chat based product that allows automation of chat, and it also has the background for automating emails and so on. So, but it doesn't have a voice channel. So we integrate with that to use the LLM and all of the other capabilities in order to offer So that means that babelforce and Zendesk together can offer a complete suite for call center and contact center. So that's basically the integration that we launched. And you're right, yeah, that's very recent. So that went live at the end of March, first of all, and that was kind of a soft beta launch. It's still in beta, but every AI product is in beta, basically, right? I mean, like none of them are like exactly very established. And it's really been very exciting because it means that so we talked earlier about this insurance company I visited with 78 AI projects, right? All of those companies are thinking about what, hang on a second, how many LLMs are we going to be running? Like, even if we're not running them directly, so, the vendors are running them in the background for us. Like, there's got to be some consolidation here, right? And then are we paying over there to have the LLM trained and optimized and over here and so one of the logic behind this integration with Zendesk is that if somebody's buying Zendesk and they're using AI agents, they're going to be training people to build stuff with those AI agents for email and for chat, for example. Then do you want to, have a new investment for your voice channel, or do you want to reuse that? And so generally, our approach to people is actually, hey, tell us what your journey is with AI. Where are you at the moment? How many projects are you running? Let's do a review of that. And then oftentimes, actually, we can plug in the AI that people are using already. I mean, of course, they can use the AI directly from us. So we wrap AI as well. We provide it out of the box and people can use it. But we're actually pretty agnostic because we see the world is changing so rapidly. It's not possible, I think, to go out in the enterprise or even mid-market and go, here, just use the stuff that we have boxed up for you. That doesn't work in a company that's running a huge number of AI projects. So that's the logic of it, and it's been super exciting because a lot of organizations are ready now with a bit more less naivety, right? Quite a bit more sophisticated. They're ready to make decisions about, okay, what's the optimal way to deploy all these AI components we're using.
That's pretty great. Yeah, and I agree. And I mean, having it all in one place, that's but don't we all want it? So that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. I'm going to look forward to more news about that. But I have a couple more questions real quick because I know
Sure.
you need to leave the usuals here. So what has been so far for you or for the company the biggest win and the biggest failure?
Oh, so I think the biggest win I'd say is probably our super successful go-to-market and relationship with Zendesk, I'd say. Because that's a multi-year activity, and we together actually are for several years now. We're winning in the what's called CCaaS, which is the contact center as a service market. So Zendesk and Babelforce wins CCaaS projects against the biggest established CCaaS players or contact center players. So we've worked our way into that situation where we genuinely offer like one of the best options for people to buy there. It's a competitive space, right? So it's not easy to do that. So the fact that Zendesk and Babelforce together do that, I think, is an amazing outcome. It's one of the things I'm most proud of, and I love working with all the people over there. Things have to gel, right, to get that far together. It's a lot about relationship, and philosophy, and we have the same philosophy, and I think our relationship is really good. But I think that's been a huge win. Biggest failure. I think we bootstrapped too long. Like I mentioned earlier, we knew we were going to bootstrap for long,
That's
right?
new.
Yeah, we bootstrapped for a bit. I mean, yeah, but it was 5 years just to put it in perspective, Anna.
Yeah.
So I think like 3 years we definitely needed to do. So I'm not backing away from bootstrapping. It's absolutely the right thing to do, and do it for as long as you can that it makes sense. But this like the decision point about when do you change is really hard, right? And you have very little information because you don't have access to investors so much who have a lot of portfolio companies. You don't have as big an experienced a board, and you don't have as much external input, so you can get a little bit trapped in your internal world. That can happen at any time. That's always a danger, of course. But I think at that particular point, when you're like, less than 8 people, as we were, um, I think we waited a bit too long, actually, on that. So a little bit earlier. That's my perspective on it.
Interesting. Yeah. But like I said, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say we waited too long. But maybe, it's also sometimes a wishful thinking. Okay, we did everything right.
Yeah, and
Let's
and I listened to some of your to several of your interviews, And I really like comparing with products that are totally different from, like you interviewed the CEO of Geckoboard, right?
Yeah.
And I was
Oh,
thinking that's almost the opposite situation in a way, because they don't have an enterprise sales team, or right.
no.
And so I think the problem with bootstrapping when you're in enterprise like we are is that there's a point you reach where you simply need, like, in order to grow, you just need an injection of capital. And if you wait too long for that, there's no way you can bridge the gap. There's no amount of bootstrapping, because you can't add 100,000 customers, say, at a small amount of money, and then try to build out from there and see what features they want. You just can't do that. You need an enterprise sales driven team, which is very expensive, and you generally can't bootstrap your way through that. So I think it's the specific nature of our business and our target customer, and the CAC. I mean, the cost of customer acquisition is relatively high. I think the particular nature of those dynamics means that there is a right point to do it, and I got it wrong. So
Well, you learned. Now you know.
yeah,
You're wise after that.
yeah.
All right. The last one is about a hack. So, anything that works for you and you think other founders would appreciate.
Well, I learned this kind of too late in a way, like everything, like I mentioned to you earlier. But I think taking care of your own health and your own mental health, actually, is just, you kind of ignore it. Well, a lot of founders I've spoken to, me included, ignore it in the beginning, because you've got a lot of drive. I mean, if you're starting a company and bootstrapping, you've obviously, you've got a lot of drive, you've got a lot of passion for the thing, and then you just absorb shocks, right? And there's quite a lot of anxiety, in running a company and bootstrapping. And so I wish I had started earlier on that track. I mean, now I do a lot. I'm super high maintenance, as people used to say in the past, like, so I need to do a lot of sport and do a lot for my mental health. But I think it's important, because you need to be at your best, and it doesn't get less complicated. It gets more complicated with, like, bigger governance teams, investors, with bigger company, with a lot more, you get new challenges. So I think that's been the most important thing for me. And like, there isn't, there's hardly a day goes by that I don't forget, okay, like, me being in a position where I can look at this big problem with a clean mind, you know, without identifying with the problem, is probably more, is probably brings more advantage than anything else I could possibly have done.
That's a great one. I think that's also something that pops up quite a lot on the podcast. So I feel like it's a very important reminder. So thanks for sharing that. And great story. I would love to talk more. Maybe let's do it again sometime. But yeah, looking forward to what else you're going to announce this year, next year. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Anna. Lovely to talk to you.
Same here. And join again anytime. And take care.